Good day and welcome to another special episode of the Offside Musings podcast. My name is Oke Ndibe. I'd like to welcome you on behalf of my co-host, Emeka Onyagwa. In today's episode, we're going to be looking at disturbing developments that happened last week in Nigeria when the Nigerian president, Muhammadu Buhari, met with relatives of passengers who were abducted on March 28th of this year from the Kaduna train station. We're also going to be looking at an interview that the presidential spokesperson, Garba Shehu, did with the BBC, where he made disclosures that should leave every Nigerian truly disturbed. You're welcome.
Let's switch it to the next iteration. Yeah, so it's an interesting week in Nigeria. Buhari's reactions, everybody's reactions, actually, not just Buhari, but Buhari in this case and his spokesman, the way they handled the publicity, the way they handled being in leadership, leading Nigeria as a whole, was unbecoming in so many ways. So it was really, it was just a continuation of mediocrity.
Yeah, there's a certain, I'm sure that there's a certain Buhari fatigue amongst Nigerians. This man has been in office for 7+ years. It's turned out exactly the way that I had proposed when he was a candidate, and a lot of Nigerians were losing their heads, just seduced by this whole mantra of change and Buhari's supposed metamorphosis into a Rawlings who was going to jail corrupt politicians in the country and so on. And I knew that none of that was going to happen because this man was being sponsored by the same politicians that he was allegedly going to send to jail. But so why are we talking about Buhari at a time when a lot of Nigerians are in the mood of, okay, we're in a nightmare. We don't want to reflect on that nightmare. Let it just, run its course, and then somebody else will take over. The reason it's important to speak about this is that Buhari's story, Buhari has sort of brought Nigeria's leadership wars to a culmination. He's epitomized everything that's wrong about leadership in Nigeria. But it's not just him. It's every person who has run Nigeria to one degree or another has been a disaster and an apology of a leader. And but then the events of last week, which I might as well describe. So last week, after 4.5 months, Buhari finally, as if he woke up, as if he'd been on a different planet, decided that an event that happened in Kaduna on March 28th, when a group of bandits went into the train station and they grabbed people and killed a few and have held dozens of them since then. I think that the president's spokesperson, the other one, Femi Adesina, actually said that there are about 31 unaccounted for of those abductees. So this happened March 28th. When such an event happens in a serious country, okay, everything, it's almost, things don't quite come to a halt. But all the resources of law enforcement, of security, are mobilized to find the location of the victims, to rescue them, and then to possibly capture and prosecute the perpetrators of the crime. Buhari went to bed instead and woke up last week, after 4.5 months, and invited some of the relatives of those who are still being held in the bush. And by the way, if you remember, a couple of weeks ago, a video went viral of the captors just lacerating the victims in a wooded area with horse whips and canes and so on. So Buhari met with them. And a real leader, a compassionate leader, would have been a comforting presence in the midst of all the grief and all the just suffering. But here is Buhari reading a very cliche-reading, cold statement to these people. So the timing, for me, was the first thing that stood out, but not the only thing. And then the same last week, Buhari's spokesman, Garba Shehu, did an interview with the BBC Hausa service in which he revealed that the mastermind of those abductions at the Kaduna train station had made a demand that in exchange for releasing his victims, he wanted his wife, who was being held by the government, released, and his wife was pregnant. And so Garba Shehu told the BBC that his wife was taken to a hospital where she was delivered of twins, and then she and her twins were then released. Now, instead of doing what he'd undertaken to do, which is to release his own captives, the terrorist then asked for an additional 6 or 7, Garba Shehu said, 6 or 7 other detainees should be released. And they were again released to him. But he continued to hold on to his captives, this terrorist. And so Garba Shehu's lesson for him, he wanted Nigerians to know that the government has been working hard, that the government has not been sleeping. But I was horrified reading this story. I really was horrified. I don't know what your reaction is before I get to my reaction.
I mean, it shows, it almost like shows a level of culpability, almost like, I almost felt like this is a person who is collaborating with these guys, go kidnap these guys, or release your guys, will have an excuse. Like, I don't know in what world that works out, where you release somebody in that kind of manner, no coordination, no nothing, zero, just here you go. It felt like these guys are working together to me.
That's one thing that I was thinking, that here is an inside job that, and you know, years ago, former President Jonathan startled the world when he said that Boko Haram was even in his government. And I think that this is, and I do know that I met some years ago, a correspondent of a foreign news organization in Nigeria. And he told me that he had talked to Nigerian soldiers who felt certain that some of their officers were embedded with Boko Haram. This was at the time when Boko Haram was just, taking territory after territory in the northeastern part of Nigeria, especially in Borno State. And so this guy said he interviewed soldiers who said that their officers would send them out on a mission, and somehow Boko Haram militants would ambush them, and that they felt that somebody within the officer corps was sending them to be slaughtered and for their military hardware and weapons to be taken by Boko Haram. So it's a sort of thing that you hear, and it's so outlandish, it's so astonishing that you don't want to believe it. But how does... So Nigeria has had for decades a police force, has had for decades security agencies, various security agencies, some we don't even know.
Mm-hmm.
And there's not one person out of those law enforcement and security apparati who could advise the government that as we release our detainees, that this terror linchpin mastermind has demanded in exchange for releasing those he's holding, that we should have some kind of mechanism to assure that he carries on his own part, that he executes his own part of the bargain. So how does the government release the man's wife and his twins, and then the man turns out and moves the goalpost and says, okay, you have to release 7 more people.
Mm-hmm.
And the government then gives him the 7 people. And the presidential spokesman is on the BBC complaining that the guy didn't keep his own side of the bargain. It's almost as if you thought you were dealing with, I don't know, did they think they were dealing with a pastor, a religious leader, a Buddhist monk? Somebody that you'd expect to honor his or her word.
Yeah, maybe they were trying to play to the religious sentiments. Well, I won't call Nigerians have a certain level of toxic religious sentiment. So maybe they're trying to play to that look, we did this and these guys didn't do that, or this guy is not what they claim they are. Yeah, I mean, that's clear.
Yeah.
You don't need somebody to tell you that people who go about kidnapping, killing people, that kind of, those are not the people you deal with without a trust but verify situation, to quote Ronald Reagan. So, I mean, at this stage, it's almost like it's more or less like at this point, at least, there's a certain level of Buhari fatigue. Might it improve as we head towards the elections, that people are going to try and hold the government more accountable? Maybe. But it just feels like people are done with the government. People want to talk about how they would either get the government out, get somebody in, or just simply find a transitional national government, or even in some cases just cannibalize the country into different segments outrightly without even bothering to ask the question to Nigerians. What do they want to do, or give Nigerians a chance to have some kind of transitional rescue situation where they can sit down and try and put things in order and ask, key groups in the country what to do, because there clearly is a Buhari. People, I mean, even hearing about this is like, well, at this point, it's like, what else is next with Buhari? I mean, Buhari, if anything can be worse than Buhari is possible, maybe Tinubu. But watching Tinubu this week, where he released the statement on International Youth Day, there was so much further for an alien guy, a guy that is clearly not fit, a guy that clearly seemed even somewhat tribalistic in his shout outs to the Niger Bob, in the way he said, and in the perception of the way he came across. It almost feels like if Nigerian leaders, which they are which you would always say, Nigerian leaders have a reputation for trying to install somebody who is worse than who they are.
Yeah.
That might be the guy for them. Yeah.
It's let me I want to return to Babangida to Buhari for a moment. Okay. And I want to read to our audience sort of the what Buhari said to these relatives, right?
Yeah.
Okay. It's mind blowing. Yeah.
Imagine.
Yeah. So here is Here is the president. Yes. So here is President Buhari speaking. Mm-hmm. Okay. First of all, if you are a leader and you are face to face with just relatives of people who have been kidnapped for months, who are beset, besieged with grief and anxiety and terror, who have not slept, just as their relatives have not slept.
Yeah.
Because if you can imagine, just put yourself in a position where you are forced to sleep out in the open forest. When it rains, the rains drench you. You haven't taken a shower. You haven't taken a bath for months. We're looking at almost 5 months. Food is irregular. I don't even know what they are doing for food. When you are sick, you're on your own. You could be beaten out of your sickness if you don't move fast enough, if your captors try to move you. And so you'd expect that somebody who knows what it means to be a leader in the presence of these relatives who are suffering so much would try to speak from the heart, would drop every written script and just talk to people and find out their stories, find out how they are coping. This is part of Buhari's speech to the group. He said, "It is understandable that emotions typically run high. We have received several suggestions about the deployment of lethal military force in extracting those still being held in captivity. This option has indeed been considered and evaluated. However, the condition to guarantee a successful outcome and minimize potential collateral damage could not be assured, and therefore that course of action had to be reluctantly discarded. My primary concern is to get everyone released safe and unhurt." When you listen to this, put yourself in the position of the relatives who are sitting there as their president gets a piece of paper to read to them. It's an insult. Okay? It's cold. It's unfelt. Okay? There's no deep feeling in it. There's no comfort that you get from it. So this man just spews words that have no meaning. Oh, my priority is to get everybody safe and unhurt. Okay? How is he going to ensure that? He's had 2 opportunities. He's given away the 2 best cars that he had. The mastermind of this kidnap had his wife in the grips of the government. The government was holding his wife. And he said, "I want my wife back." And they handed the wife back to him.
Imagine.
Then he said, "Give me 7 more people." Guess what? The government could have said, "Okay, release at least
some people.
2/3 of those you are holding. We've released your wife. If you release some, then we'll release this 7. No. The government said, "Oh, you want 7 more? Here, take 7 more." And so, as you suggested, I'm seeing more and more. It's almost inescapable to suggest and to suspect that there was this inside job where the people who were negotiating with this guy just were working for the man rather than negotiating on behalf of their victims.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. Well, it just felt like, they just needed an excuse to release them. Because you even think about it, the kind of efforts and planning and everything that it takes to have even executed that job, even if they have the weapons, which a lot of those weapons are coming in from Syria, they're coming in from Libya, which is why I'm, petrified with the way the U.S. government is gone against Ukraine to start supplying weapons.
Yeah.
But that's another story too.
Yeah.
But they're coming in there, you see the videos, but even with all those things, you need a certain level of coordination with government officials to be able to pull all these things they're pulling off, and then they get them. And even you don't need to me, I don't even think you need to be trained in counterterrorism or you know, security situations of any kind, to just understand simple common sense. You can't just say, hey, okay, where do you want us to drop this thing? So, well, we'll draw, and you guys be nice guys, and all right, man. Okay, well, good. Clearly, you don't need to be, but somehow, some way, the only people in the world who need to understand this, need somebody to tell them this, are the ones running the government.
Yeah,
that just seems very unlikely.
Which you know, I mean, when you think about it, what just transpired, what Shehu revealed, I don't know what's more frightening, whether it is that this happened, you know, in other words, that the terrorists were able to get the government to meet all their requests, and they did not have to do a thing in exchange, or the way that Garba Shehu himself misread the import, the meaning of what had happened. So he thought that if he told the story to the BBC, that Nigerians would say, "Oh, our government is trying." Okay, they are releasing all these, detainees, right? To that the mastermind of this Kaduna carnage wanted released, you know. Yeah, and he says, oh, you know, so people who think that we're not doing anything should know that we've released all these people, right? So, it was, once I heard that story, once I read about that interview, it was clear to me that the story was one of abject ineptitude, incompetence, and perhaps criminal culpability on the part of members of the government. Okay? So, as I have told you, that this is actually, that this man, that the Buhari team was Ronaldo'ed. It's as if you had a football match, okay, between the great Ronaldo on the one side, and you put kindergarten kids on the other side with him. And so he dribbled all the kids and went and scored twice.
Yeah.
You know? So the Buhari team was Ronaldo'ed twice. Okay? And how does it happen? So part of the reason we should discuss this is that it's not just Buhari. I actually doubt that Buhari was part of the granular phase of the negotiations. I'm sure that Buhari signed off on the release of the terrorist's wife and his twins, newborn twins. So it's not Buhari's failing. Ultimately, he takes full responsibility. But there are officials paid by Nigerians, okay, whose job is to ensure that this kind of failure did not happen. And all of them couldn't secure the release of a single person. So there are, of course, a few of the abductees have been released, but only after negotiation between their families or their friends and their captors.
Yeah.
So, in a sense, as far as the relatives are concerned, they are on their own. In fact, what Buhari said to them, even though he would deny it, is essentially, hey, we've done our best, we've screwed up. We had 2 goals against us by this ragtag, perhaps uneducated man, but who used his thinking cap, right? How can I get the better of the government? So you're on your own.
Yeah. Yeah. It reminds me of what was I even? Anyway, it just reminds me of a audio that was circulating this week on the Minister for Transport, I believe, Rotimi Amechi. I don't know
Yeah.
what former governor, former everything. At this point in time, after 25 years, most of these guys are former everything.
Former something.
You know, Amechi is former. But he was talking early in the administration about how inept and clueless and visionless Buhari is. That, you know, you'd go in and you talk with him, or earlier on, I don't know, it wasn't so recent, you go home and talk to him and he doesn't care, he's going to do what he's going to do, and that they're suffering in the land. And, you know, it tells you the kind of, and he's still in the government, obviously, it tells you the kind of people who are around him. But at this point in time, I feel 100% like Buhari should take leave, step down, whatever.
You know, I mean,
I think it's that bad.
Yeah.
I don't see the point of, I don't see what use he, like you said last week, the question is whether Buhari should have been gone last week.
Yeah.
I don't see what use he needs to, and it's not even because I think the country is in any way, shape or form salvageable if Oshibanjo or whoever takes over, or at least if it's like a transitional rescue government, like you've this thing, okay, that makes some sense. It's just the fact that there is a complete waste of life, complete waste of generations of people in the country just sitting down, nobody's doing anything, the country is not moving. I was just out in the Nigerian diplomat house who passed away in mysterious circumstances. You know, he was eventually found in the river. And even the wife was talking about how they had been talking about planning on looking at what's going to happen sooner or later, and that they have a house in Nigeria, and they're looking at just selling the house and forgetting about Nigeria and staying here permanently. And that's the sentiment you see with a lot of people who even have properties there. You know, even the ones who maybe inherited the properties from their parents or something. A lot of those properties are locked up now. A lot of their survivors, or maybe the wife or the husband, a lot of these guys, regular people, don't even, if they have anybody overseas, they're outside the country. They're most of my relatives and this things, they're like, okay, I'm out. Some of them are planning to come back. Some of my relatives are planning to come back and vote for Peter Obi. But from now to this thing, they're not enjoying the place. They don't want to be there. It's a complete failure of every single institution and everything. And it's just like, look, it's pointless. Like, what's this man? What's use?
Yeah.
You know, if you have any value for human life, this man has no business being there anymore.
And of course, you know, I mean, if what happened in Kaduna at the train station were an isolated development, we could actually say, okay, this sort of thing could happen in any country, even in the United States, in Britain, in all kinds of parts of Europe from time to time, that this spectacular crime could be committed with audaciousness. But just last week as well, a major business newspaper in Nigeria called Business Day reported that between July of last year, July of 2021 and June of 2020, 3,420 Nigerians were abducted. About 500 of them were killed in the process of being adopted. Okay? That those who had abducted them had initially asked for, I think, 6-point-something billion naira, but ended up getting something a little above 600 million naira.
Yeah.
And the paper was saying that these payments, you know, sometimes families have to mortgage everything they own, land, cars, every asset, in order to pay off kidnappers, abductors, and so on. That this development continues to deepen poverty in a country where people spend 60-something% of their income on food.
Yeah.
So most Nigerians spend in excess of 62% of their income just to eat. Okay? So imagine now if your relative is abducted, and, you know, it used to be that the victims of kidnaps and so on were well-to-do Nigerians. But then abductions, kidnaps actually came to a point where they have replaced what used to be incessant armed robbery. So there are cases where a woman selling akara by the roadside is being abducted, and so the family could pay a few thousand naira for her release, but that's a chunk of their income.
Yeah.
So Buhari has, after running on the promise that he, so for here you have Buhari who ran on this bragging rights that he understood the security environment and that he was going to send Boko Haram packing and he was going to secure every piece of territory in Nigeria. Mm-hmm. And yet under his watch, the country has fallen into a more abysmal state of insecurity. With some areas of Nigeria now no-go areas for citizens and for the police, and where you have to pay off unknown gunmen and members of some amorphous group if you want to do any activities at all.
Yeah. I mean, I was talking with a friend in Abuja, and he articulated it like there's so many ways people go broke in this country. I mean, especially when you're not connected to the national purse, which is essentially the money we should be using to build the country. And one of the number one way you go broke is kidnapping. Yeah. A relative gets kidnapped. I was just saying it like, you maybe you go from the US, your kids get kidnapped. Mm-hmm. It's easier for them to even want to kidnap your kids than kidnap you, because at least you will make moves. Even if you come back here, you have 1,000 or 2,000 in your account or wherever. You go sell your property. You go sell what you have. So it's the same way in Nigeria. You get this thing. You're going to sell your property. You're more than likely, because it's even less structured in Nigeria. If you have a house or something or this thing, you're more than likely going to sell it for far less than its value. At least here there's some. Whether it's here or the UK, there's some kind of structure. There's at least, even if you're selling it in a bad market or you're selling it in a rush, you'd still be somewhere more. You're more than likely going to be somewhere in the ballpark, right? Mm-hmm. But they are just going to go in and be like, all right, this house is supposed to be worth 200 million. Anybody that can give me 45 million,
pay off.
I need to pay off. So that's a and people are going through these things, and it's crazy because it would have been great to. It's almost analogous, because it's like it feels like the two candidates coming behind who people want, mm-hmm. and are going to be worse than Buhari is by far. Yeah. To me, I think I think Peter Obi is the better of the three, and he won't be worse than Buhari. However, I think the problem of Nigeria is just way more than what. I think all the structural problems have come to the fore. So short of Nigeria having some sort of way of getting a massive amount of money supply that the citizens are just going to benefit, because the taps would have to be turned on for them to benefit. Short of that, when you look at it historically, whether it's any empire or wherever you want to, or any country that has become a country, whether it's UK or Spain or wherever, where you have slavery, or the Roman Empire where you have trade or wherever, I don't know what it might be, but short of aliens coming out to bring some precious metals, I don't know, maybe,
Yeah, I mean, the truth is that if Nigeria had, again, my favorite word is imaginative leaders, okay? Because you actually can't build a space and make it really grand and attractive unless you can first see it through your mind's eye, okay? But the tragedy we have in Nigeria is that we've had for too long presidents and governors will think that the measure of an achievement is to build roads. So over the years, I've sort of followed the 100-day report, first term report of governors, even of presidents. And when you ask them, what is your achievement? It's like their number one signal achievement is, I constructed so many kilometers of roads.
Yeah.
And Nigerians have fallen for that scam. Okay, I've told this story before of being on Ben television in London, being interviewed. And it was during Jonathan's administration. And I was saying that Jonathan had very little achievement to speak of. And it was a call-in show. So somebody called in and said, you have to be, the Nigerian thing, you have to be objective and you have to be constructive. Jonathan has achieved a lot. I said, okay, name his achievements. He said, he's building roads. And I said to him, you live in London, in the UK, right? He said, yes. I said, have you ever heard the mayor of London or the British Prime Minister name building roads as their achievement, as an achievement? And he said to me, you cannot compare Nigeria and England. And I said, why not? I said, the Nigerian president is paid more than the British Prime Minister. Okay?
Yep.
Nigerian senators are paid more in the year than the US president. Think about that.
Yeah.
In fact, I think that members of the House of Reps, at least a few years ago, were paid like 2 or 3 times more than the annual salary of the American president. So why is it that we pay our, touts, unthinking, unimaginative, ill-educated, unenlightened politicians? Why do we pay them so much? And yet when somebody says they are not performing, citizens rise up and say, you can't compare them to Britain and to America. But yes, we should pay them as if they were geniuses. Okay? So I told this guy, I said, indeed, we should compare our leaders to the best in the world because we pay them as if they were the best. And his response was the normal cliche, Rome was not built in a day. So there's a certain kind of, and again, it has to do with our educational system.
Yeah.
It's accustomed us to a certain indolence and laziness of the mind. So Rome was not built in a day. So somebody says it and thinks, I've made a profound point. And I said to them, when we talk about Rome being built, not being built in a day, you are looking at the grandeur and the scale and the ambition of ancient Rome. Okay? But I said, so it took decades to build that Rome. But then we have the template. And once you have the template for doing something, it's like the Chinese. Sometimes they build a bridge, a very impressive bridge, in a matter of weeks. Okay? So once a template for doing something is there, you don't have to spend as many years as the original architects and builders spent, right?
Yep.
So if I'm building an experimental house, and it takes me 3 years to do it, at the end of it, you have a template for how it was built. If you take possession of that template, you can build it like in months.
Should be.
So if you then say, it took 3 years to build, so I'm going to take 3 years to do my own, because that's laziness.
Yeah.
Okay. So, and part of what the sort of the discussion that we have today about this Buhari administration and how they were Ronaldo'ed by a ragtag, perhaps uneducated militant in the bush somewhere. If one man, if one man was capable of dribbling the government round and round, outwitting, outsmarting the entire machinery of the Nigerian government, all the president, his ministers, his permanent secretaries, his security chiefs, his police chiefs. If one man could get them, could put them at the top of, at the tip of his finger and just swirl them around at his pleasure. Consider this. Nigeria often goes into negotiations with the Chinese, negotiations with the British, negotiations with the European Union, negotiations with America, okay, where they bring their best. Negotiations even with Cameroon, okay. How did we lose Bakassi? Okay. How, negotiations with Ghana, with other African countries. So there are people who take themselves seriously. There's this picture that, again, went viral, but lots of pictures like that, where you find Nigerian government officials with the Nigerian president in a foreign country, say in Germany, Nigerian government officials meeting with their German counterparts. You see the German officials with papers in front of them, which they have read. These are proposals. They know what they want out of this negotiation. They come prepared. You look at the Nigerian side, everybody, the best that you can see is they are wearing $30,000, $50,000 wristwatches. Show that I'm a big man, right? So they're just sitting there. Sort of reminds you of an event that I immortalized in my first novel, Arrows of Rain, which is based on an apocryphal story, a story whose historical accuracy is not established. But there is this story that I think Nigeria's first foreign minister, post-independence, had gone to a UN gathering where they were talking about...
Jaja Wachukwu, right?
Yeah, that's yeah. So where they were, I think, discussing some major issue, maybe nuclear disarmament. And so this Nigerian minister famously, sat down, hugged his belly, and started sleeping. And so that at one point, reporters went to him and said, what's your position about these talks, these negotiations? And he said, well, I wish to assure you that we've come with an empty mind. So, again, it's a story that was told. I cannot verify, its authenticity. So that's why I said it's apocryphal. But it's one of those stories that remind you of the incompetence, the unseriousness of Nigerian politicians, which is a tragedy of our country, right? Yeah. It's a tragedy of our country that, So I'm wondering, when we sit down and we negotiate with the Chinese, okay, they want to do, we're going to build you the best road you've ever seen, but sign here. Yeah. Do our leaders who go there say, wait a minute, let's go and study it, and say to themselves, are our interests ultimately served? So if the Nigerian government could not serve the interests of Nigerians who are kidnapped and who have been suffering for months in the bush, the Nigerian government could not secure their release when it had the carrot to give to their kidnapper, then how do we even engage with serious nations when we have negotiations?
Yeah. I mean, those stories of the sleeping diplomats, that's sleeping in negotiations. That's a standard. That's like standard.
Yeah, coming with an empty mind.
You go in, you hear it, and you would say building roads is not an achievement. I would say, well, there are exceptions to the rule, but Nigerians don't meet those exceptions. What might be the exceptions? Good example might be if you were a government that was key to building the Eurotunnel between England and France.
That's an achievement. Yeah.
If you are part of a government that, for instance, goes into hypothetically goes into Nigeria and revamps air travel
Yes.
the way it should be. Because if you go online now, especially with the enthusiast communities, a lot of them even actually go to Nigeria to make videos on Nigerian air travel, which is absolutely disastrous. For the most part, not every single, but a lot of the airlines, a lot of the distance, you go in there, big names, but the air travel, in a lot of cases are lacking. So if somebody went in there and revamped that, that's that kind of infrastructure development. And when I say revamp, if you ask me, okay, specific, is that's too vague. Go in. The airports are atrocious, generally speaking. Every year, money is allocated for these airports. Nothing is done.
Yeah.
So you
patch here,
of
patch something
there.
that is already
Distant.
in disrepair.
Yeah.
So you are patching ugliness.
Yeah, so you don't even need too much. You already have a situation where, for instance, some of the money has finally found its way, like in Lagos, to be MMM2, the new wing, but nobody's moving there. Why? Bureaucracy, corruption. People are trying to gouge the operator, so most of the airlines still use the old terminal, which is absolutely horrendous at this point in time. You have some new terminal, some new airports like in Port Harcourt, where, for instance, like Port Harcourt now, they revamped the airport, they designed it, they had a very good architectural firm to design inside, which the guy made a lot of videos. He used to walk out here, he lives out there. And what's the net effect? You have a lot more international flights now going to Port Harcourt. So even like the last time I was in Nigeria with Lufthansa, they stopped me in Abuja, the same flight that stopped in Abuja first. Still flew all the way to Port Harcourt to take passengers because they have a base of people who are willing to use the airport, not just stop in Abuja. So if you went in and you revamped all these airports, Lagos, Port Harcourt, Enugu only has like Ethiopian Airlines, and you did that revamp to the point that there is sanity in Nigerian travel, you don't have 7 to 10 people when you land. Was there for the boys now? Harassing, disturbing, making you feel uncomfortable.
Yeah.
You know,
you arrive in any Nigerian airport, you go to use the toilet.
Yeah.
As many passengers do first thing when they exit. Somebody cleaning the toilet is gonna say, God will bless you, sir. And it's all like, give me money. What do you have for me, sir? So
if you sanitize all that during your tenure and you come out and say, well, part of my achievement was I began with sanitizing, then we're going to sit down and be like, well, this is what you should do, but we give you kudos for at least doing what you should do. It's like
doing it well.
Yeah, it's like having kids and they do well in school. And you're like, okay, you look at the report card, they're like, oh, okay, at least, all right, you should improve here, but you're doing well.
Yeah.
You can pat the person on the back. But the way Nigerian officials have theirs is like, they construct the most mundane, regular roads, regular stuff.
Which gets washed off after one rainy season, okay? So this whole roads that they claim, it's sometimes I call it just painting the road black.
Very true.
So they just grade the road, they paint them with very thin film of tar.
Yeah.
And so a vehicle, even a medium-sized vehicle, brakes on the road, the tire just washes off, scrapes off the tar, and then it rains and there are gullies all over the road. And yet, this is what our so-called leaders, and when I speak about leaders in Nigeria, I really cringe, because we don't have leaders. I don't know. Rulers is what I'll call them because they behave more like rulers. And but it's really disturbing that we have, these mediocrities running our lives who can't secure the release of dozens of captives when they had something with which they could negotiate, which they negotiated away and then just had. I mean, it's like, I don't know. It's what it is like, like if you sent a child which happened sometimes in years ago in Nigeria. You handed a child a big sum of money, and you say, "Go and buy me bread." So they go and buy bread with 100 naira in the times when bread was maybe 5 naira, and the bread seller is a crook.
Yeah.
He gives the child, instead of 95 naira in change, he gives the child 10 naira. So the child comes back, and you say, "Where's the change?" He said, "This is what they gave me." And you go and meet the man. The man says, "Oh, I gave him 95, right?"
Mm-hmm.
So, except that in this case, the Nigerian government, gave away everything, and they didn't even secure the release of one person. So it's almost as if there are people within the government who perhaps are getting paid off, either for ideological reasons, they're on the side of ideological, meaning also religious ideology, on the side of the kidnappers who want them to keep their victims, or just sheer incompetence. But it's that kind of incompetence is incomprehensible to me. And it's that it would happen, and then the presidential spokesperson, just without shame or a sense of irony, tells the story. And it tells the story to illustrate that we are working very hard. Yeah, we've been releasing people to these terrorists.
Yeah, running
it's
backwards.
It's just that they have not met us halfway. They. Oh.
It's like, telling you that, one thing is I just feel they're culpable. But another thing is like somebody just coming out to tell you, or maybe they don't understand that people see them as being culpable.
Yeah.
But also telling you that you're all at the starting block and everybody's running forward, but you're deciding to run backwards.
Yes.
Like, you guys should clap for me. Like I'm running, running backwards.
Yes.
Like, guy, you need to understand if you're culpable, which looks likely.
Yeah.
You need to stop trying to talk to people like you're talking to a whole bunch of
idiots.
Yeah,
as if people can't see through your game.
Yeah.
And talking about running backward is like resetting the rules so that in a race you come last and you raise your hand as the winner and you say, "Hey, I was first from behind, so I won, give me the medal." Okay.
Yeah.
So it was a very, for me, dispiriting, despairing week.
Yeah.
A week in which one was reminded in a very embarrassing way about just the perils of being Nigerian and how you suffer on behalf of the country. Nigeria is pain to its citizens.
Yeah.
And so, as you said, there are all kinds of prospects, which, we've said we'll talk about at some point, that there is the process of balkanization de facto going on as we speak. More and more states are setting up their security apparatus, so a de facto state police, which is not allowed under Nigerian law. But the center no longer holds. The whole idea of a country is it's I don't know. It's one, and trust me, the frustrating thing is, so I have a friend who always tells me, "Oh, can't you find something positive, good to talk about Nigeria?" And trust me, I try.
Yeah.
And there are positive things happening, right? But those positive things
on individual levels.
On individual levels.
Yeah.
So you look at the art scene, you see our musicians, you see our filmmakers, you see our writers thriving, you see our intellectuals doing wonderful things around the world.
The humanities in Nigeria is thriving.
Just even the
medical
survival.
Professionals,
Yes.
People are surviving.
Yeah,
are doing great. But as a collective,
it's a narrative of
and I would rather
failure.
people like us be the ones telling the stories than say people that have a vested interest and see us as their competition.
Yeah.
all around the globe, whether it's other ethnic groups in Africa or congregations here in America, where they might call themselves whatever. You have certain Black American groups who try to congregate as if they're a tribe who love to obviously attack Nigerians. But I'd rather tell the story of what's happening, the what, the where, the why, than have some other person tell the story for purely malicious purposes.
That's right. That's right.
So yeah,
and we can't hide.
Yeah.
What's not working, what's in plain sight, and especially not when our leaders demonstrate day after day this tragedy.
Yeah.
And that's what happened last week. So last week was just an Olympian display of incompetence, of ineptitude, of absolute confusion by the government. The government came out, the president came out and thought that he was doing a good turn by meeting the victims, but, he came across as cold and disconnected and nonchalant. And for his spokesman to confess to a lone man dribbling every resource of the Nigerian government, dribbled them like Ronaldo and Messi will dribble a secondary school football team, an elementary school football team, right? Dribbled them mercilessly, scored at will. And this, Shehu, Garba Shehu was telling the story like a story of triumph, or we've been working hard. Anyway, so I'm sure that you felt, watching us, you felt our pain. It spells out. I mean, it ultimately points to the idea that we have to find a way to rescue this space called Nigeria. And if we can't, because it's not inevitable that this is possible, if we can't, we should face up to it and basically decide how to pack it up. Yeah. So welcome. Thank you very much for joining us again on this special episode, and we look forward to welcoming you again soon.
Yep. All right.